Hey Most Amazing Top 10 family, I'm your host Trader Rain and welcome back to Most Amazing Top 10. Nobody wants to die. We all want to live together in some super cool futuristic society where everyone is hot forever and we all learn new science stuff and go to planets and eat the best food that you could ever think of. Well, I don't know if you guys want that out of life, but that's definitely my idea of an amazing future. But sadly, one day we will all meet the grave, but on a few occasions there were people who were thought to be dead, but they haven't gone all the way to the other side. It happens so often that I am bringing you today's list of top 10 scary times people woke up in coffins. All of you at home should stick around for the whole list because I'm going to be doing some more pet shoutouts that you love so much. Remember, if you want me to shout out your pet, you can hit me up on Instagram. And for anyone at home who wants some more Most Amazing Top 10 content, you should check us out on Instagram and Facebook. We are starting to do Facebook exclusive content, which you won't want to miss. And without taking any longer, let's get into this list. At number 10, we have NZ8 Dead. Back in the day, there were only so many ways you could check if a person was dead. You could check someone's pulse, you could look to see if they were breathing, maybe check their eyes to see if they were moving. So if there was a doctor who was bad at this, they might make a mistake and inspect a body improperly. Well, the year was 1915, and that was when doctors still thought that draining your blood could help you. Ezzy Dunbar had a serious seizure that left her laying on the ground unresponsive. A doctor inspected her and it seemed that she had had her last seizure and moved on to the big pearly gates. A funeral was held for her the next day. Everything was set and the priest did the ceremony. A bunch of people from the town showed up, but her sister was unable to make it as he was lowered into the grave and they were about to start pouring the dirt onto her grave when her sister arrived. She wanted to give her respects, and being Ezzy's family, she was absolutely allowed. They raised the coffin up and opened it, and when the lid lifted off the coffin, Ezzy sat up like a vampire. It's no surprise that everyone ran for the hills, but Ezzy was alive and lived until 1962, although there were a bunch of people in the town who thought she was some sort of monster. At number 9, we have the Brazilian zombie. Well, it seems that people weren't only buried alive in the past, when doctors only washed their hands when they took a big poo. In 2013, there was a lady walking through a graveyard. She was visiting a family's grave. She wasn't just hanging out there for no reason. But the reason doesn't matter. What she saw is the reason why you're here. She saw hands lift up out of a grave followed by a head. There was a man pulling himself out of his own grave. Now she called the paramedics to come help this guy, which is the right thing to do. I think I would have gotten on a plane and gone to a new country to avoid the zombie outbreak. The paramedics arrived and took the man to the hospital. He had almost been beaten to death. This took place in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and it seems that this might have been a gang attack and the people buried him to try and cover their tracks. At number 8, we have Watch Your Step. Alright guys, I'm going to go way back in time for this one. Could you imagine you're about to get married and then you die? Then everyone has to have a funeral for you, which is basically the opposite of a wedding. The year was 1571 and Matthew Wall was all dressed up and ready to head down to the church for his wedding when he bit the dust. You already have all your friends and family there, so might as well just flip the script and get the funeral going. Everyone was heartbroken. A hole was dug and Matthew's body was being carried in a coffin to his final resting place. Then one of the pallbearers slipped. Matthew's body banged against his own coffin and he was jolted back to life. Turns out he was just in a coma. He started banging on the coffin and then jumped out, and then everything flipped back into a wedding. Now the town of Brahing, Hertfordshire rings a bell every October 2nd on the day that Matthew was almost buried alive and then had a wedding. At number 7, we have 50% is almost a pass. The deeper you get into this, the more I am afraid of being buried alive. I should learn that wood punching technique from Kill Bill Volume 2 so I can punch my way out of a coffin if I ever get entombed too early. Well, Mary Nora didn't know the wood splitting fist technique, probably because she was a 17-year-old girl in France in 1971. I don't think it was common knowledge for the teens in France to know that. Well, she got cholera and she was set in a casket and it was nailed shut, and then she was lowered into the catacombs. Everyone thought she was dead at that moment. It wasn't until 10 years later when someone was going down into the catacombs to check some of the records and her body was found halfway out of her pine box. She had decayed into a skeleton, but it seems that what happened was she was alive at the time that she was laid to rest in the catacombs. She woke up out of her coffin, forced her way out, but when she saw that she was in the catacombs, she passed out and then smacked her head, which led to her death. She was so close to being free. At number 6, we have Open Up. This one is very similar to the last. It was 1850 in South Carolina. A young girl got a terrible sickness and was laid to rest in a mausoleum. This was the last time her family thought they would see her. But it was years later when they came to bury one of their sons in the mausoleum that they opened it up and found the girl's skeleton right on the other side of the door. It seemed that she rose up out of her coffin and tried to get through the doors but was unsuccessful. She most likely died from dehydration. At number 5 we have targeted. People will do horrible things and their motives are often unknown. This story took place in 2014. It wasn't that long ago. A young girl was tricked by 2 people. She lived in the town of Uttar Pradesh in India. They told the girl to come with them to a festival that was happening on the other side of town. They lured the girl into a sugarcane field, and then when no one was around they strangled her, dug a small grave, and then threw her body in there. Thank God some of the workers saw the couple leaving without the girl because they got a little suspicious and then they went to go investigate. They found some dirt that had recently been disturbed, dug it up, and then found the girl. They were able to treat her and save this young girl's life. At number 4 we have God's plan. God's plan, man. You know God's plan. You don't get a chance like this very often. Maggie Dixon was sent to the gallows for her crime of letting her child die. She was having an affair, got pregnant, she kept it a secret, the baby didn't survive the delivery, and then she disposed of the corpse in secret, but it was found. Eventually was connected to Maggie, and now she had a date with the hangman. She was hanged, boxed up in a coffin, and then put on the back of a carriage that was taking her to the cemetery to be buried. But on the way there, she popped out of the coffin. Now you think people would suspect her of being some sort of monster, but that's not what happened at all. Everyone thought that this was the will of the Lord, that she'd been expunged by God for her crimes, and she was able to have a second shot at life. She got back together with her husband, and the two lived happily ever after. I don't think it can work out better than that. That's the best case scenario for getting caught after killing your kid. At number 3 we have sleeping sickness. Sleeping sickness is very strange. It's a disease that will take over a person's body, and it can kill them, but most of the time will knock them into a coma and they will seem dead. In the 1800s this was sweeping through a town in Kentucky. It got into the bones of Octavia Hatcher. Everyone thought she was dead, so the town had a funeral for her and she was buried. Then a week later, some of the people who had seemed to be dead but hadn't been buried started to come out of their comas. Octavia's husband put 2 and 2 together and he had his wife dug up, but it was already too late and his worst fears were realized. There were scratch marks on the inside of her coffin and her face had a terrifying expression on it because she was buried alive. At number 2 we have 2 for 2. Imagine waking up in a coffin not once but twice. The year was 1647 and Miss Blunden took a little bit too much milk of the poppy, which is something people would take for pain, and it is also pretty much heroin. It knocked her into a coma and the drug was so powerful that people thought she was dead, so they set up a funeral for her. She was buried, and then later that day some children were playing in the cemetery and they heard screams coming from her grave. So they dug her up and they found that she was covered in scratches, like she'd been trying to escape, but she had stopped moving, so everyone thought that they were too late in saving her and she was now dead for real this time. She was then buried again the next day and then dug up again so the coroner could find out how she died, only to find more scratches and ripped clothes. It seems when they dug her up the first time she was still alive, and then they reburied her and then she struggled to get out again. And for the number 1 spot we have Madame Bobbin. This one takes the cake, guys. It is the scariest one I could find. Madame Bobbin came back from Africa in 1905. She had yellow fever and was getting sicker and sicker. The worst part about this was that she was pregnant, and it meant that the baby along with Madame Bobbin might die. And sadly those fears were met a few days later and she was buried. After the funeral though, one of the nurses was talking to Madame Bobbin's father and was complaining that she thought Madame Bobbin was buried too soon, that her body was still warm when it was taken away from the hospital. Furious, her father had the grave dug up and they found a horrible sight. Not only had Madame Bobbin been buried too early and suffocated in her coffin, but she also gave birth to her baby who lay dead in the coffin with her. This one is terrifying. Alright everyone, that has been our list, and let's lighten the mood a little bit. As promised, I'm going to be doing some more pet shoutouts. Remember, if you want me to shout out your pet, you can hit me up on Instagram. I pick new pets every day, so if you don't get picked one day, you can message back another day. Without taking any longer, let's shout out some pets. First off, we have Remy, who is the cutest hamster boy of all time that has ever lived. That is for sure. I've clarified it. It's like I've done the work. Cutest hamster ever. Then we have Cupcake, who has their little toy and looks so good. I love it when dogs have toys and they just hold them like this is mine. We also have Jersey, who looks like they're contemplating the meaning of life. The cat's just laying there like, Next we have Elia, who's a husky Puppy. Why are puppies so cute? I can't even handle it. It doesn't even process in my brain. The cuteness overtakes everything. After that, we have Gizmo, who's looking very fancy, and like the Flash caught him off guard. And to close it out, we have Bun Bun, who is a bunny, truly living up to their name. Alright everyone, that has been our list. Thank you all so much for tuning in. As always, I would love it if you could like, comment, subscribe, and hit the little notification bell. Until next time, I have been your host, Jay Arena, and I guess always double check your coffins to make sure the person's dead. Bye.